What do you want to do with that information? Because it's yours. I want you to be really successful, and that matters to me. And I think that a big part of that is having people who mentor you in life. And to be totally honest, we ask prospective students who are interviewing to be in the scholarship program why mentorship matters.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. What's one of the best answers you hear about why do you think mentorship matters?
Yeah. For me, if a young person at that stage, before they've entered the collegiate environment, can understand how much a relationship matters, that's everything I need to know. Can you acknowledge that there are people who've spoken into your life and have given you guidance and given you perspective, and that that relationship has mattered to where you are today? That's all I need. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say that that's the story I get. I think I get a lot of like, it's important to be coached. It's important to get advice. It's important to basically be told what to do. But if they can still acknowledge that like this other human has very much mattered to me and they're a big part of who I am today, those are aces for me. I just need you to acknowledge that other people are going to be really foundational to your life and that they have shaped you. And so I am looking for a little bit of humble. I'm looking for a little bit of acknowledgement about someone else and a little bit of like, can you step outside of yourself? When I think about those answers, they're super memorable. It's when a student can tell me a story of how someone sacrificed for them and how it's meant so much to them. And it doesn't have to be like the most insane sacrifice anyone's been asked to do. But I think about the students who've talked about single parenthood and how impactful a parent has been who has given and given and given.
Mm.
I think about somebody who talks about a teacher who saw them and recognized them and who said, like, I see your potential. I think about those stories as really foundational ones to me because it's someone who has enough wisdom at an extremely young age to acknowledge how influential other people are and how much people can change your life.
Most people in their 20s aren't lost.
They're just early.
That's right. Welcome to After the Bell, conversations for young professionals figuring out what comes next without pretending to have it all figured out. I'm Nick Kaufman Mamisashvili. Welcome to my office. All right. Quint, hello. It's so good to see you, my friend.
Hey, Nick. Good to be here, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
How are you?
I'm well, man. I'm well. It is summer. It is moving and grooving, and I am excited to get into the summer season a little bit. Recently took some international travel to Costa Rica, and so kind of just coming back from that experience and diving in at work and in the community. And so just excited to be in the summer season. It's a highlighted season for me when I think about all four here in Nebraska.
100%. I love summer too. And as someone who's in higher education, I can imagine it's a whole different ball game in terms of seasonality and margin in
Yes,
your life and doing things that
absolutely.
you just have been looking forward to. So let's catch the people up a little bit about our relationship and then
Yeah.
also why I invited you onto the podcast as a guest. So you're the director of career, leadership, and service at Doane University, our alma mater. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about what that means and what you do.
Absolutely. So I work with a team of people who are basically focused on supporting students in those kind of three arenas: career development, leadership development, service learning programs. And so I get this just incredible opportunity to work with our students and help them think about themselves as leaders on our campus and in their community and help them think about like how do they want to grow as a leader while they're at Doane? What are the experiences they need to have? We have a scholarship leadership program at Doane called the Hanson Leadership Program. And that's something that I oversee and work with a number of students where I teach leadership classes, provide upperclassmen and mentors, guide them into community service opportunities in Crete and Saline County here in Nebraska. And I also oversee kind of all the new student orientation experience on campus. And so as new students are coming to campus, helping them find belonging and connection and just foster relationship on a small campus and train the student leaders and kind of execute the program. In the career development world, it's kind of like A to Z career development. So it's like I have no concept of what I want to do or why I would ever want to do anything, but people tell me I'm supposed to, all the way to, hopefully we've been on that journey. You maybe have multiple opportunities you're looking at and considering, and you're trying to navigate like, how do I decide? What do I prioritize? What's the important thing for me? So kind of helping students all along that journey, working with employers, graduate programs, alumni, really just trying to help students understand more about the things they don't understand when it comes to career development. And we use the adage a lot, you don't know what you don't know. And I think in career
Mm,
development, that is just so essential to the work that we do at Doane. On the service and service learning side of things, really, it's about saying at Doane, we care about our students having experiences in the community, and we want them to be people who post graduation are those who give back and serve their
mhm,
community as a part of who they've grown into as a full person. And so we try to create volunteer opportunities specifically in Saline County as the only university in that county, trying to support students getting out there, maybe sampling some things, getting some more experiences, but also learning more about the needs of the community. I think that's a big thing that students don't always consider. Sometimes they don't think of themselves as they transition into the university setting as I'm a member of this new community. And I don't really care about helping them figure that out and think of themselves as a Cretan as a part of their time on
mm.
the Crete campus and, getting them involved more to learn more about the world. I think when you serve other people, you just learn way more about the world than you do in a lot of settings.
Well, that's amazing work. And one of the reasons I'm passionate about you being a guest here is that that work is deeply connectional. It's a guide. It almost seems like a pivot point for young adults. Hey, you're going to be thrust out into the world. Have you thought about this yet? From that spectrum of, I'm talking to you the first time and I have no idea why I'm here, all the way to someone who's super driven. Help me get the best opportunity to do this thing.
Yeah.
It's cool that you can fill that whole gap. One of the things that I've always admired about you is you have always been able to be a chameleon in many spaces
Mm.
and to create relationships with folks in many spaces. And so I feel like, I mean, obviously you're doing the work, but this is right up your alley. And
It
so
is,
it's
man.
it's such
It
a
is.
pleasure to hear.
Yeah, and that's so kind of you to say, Nick, and I think that is where my work really connects well with the giftings that I've been given. But honestly, like a lot of that work is successful because of the people that I work with. I have
Yeah.
exceptional colleagues and just deeply invested students. I think about how much some of my students care about the work that we're doing, and that just brings me such joy to have them be a part of it because they get to put it together and then they actually get to empower their peers to be a part of that journey. And then when you have been somewhere long enough to see the cycles of that, just how beautiful it is to have like this student you worked with 6 years ago as an alum come back to be a part of an event like Relay for Life, which is like a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society. And they're talking to one of your student execs who did that same role. The way they engage with each other is just like such a beautiful part of the work that we get to do to see those things come full circle.
I love that, man. That's so cool. You're running the Hanson Leadership Program. Is that how you
Correct.
describe it? So
Yeah.
you were part of the Hanson Leadership
Absolutely.
Program at the
Yeah.
very kind of nascent stage of the Hanson
Yeah.
Leadership Program. So
Oh,
tell me a
for
little bit
sure.
about what it's like to not only go back to your alma mater, which we
Yeah.
love, but
Yeah.
also to go back to the scholarship program that once helped you find your path. And now you are overseeing the whole thing and making it go.
Yeah. Absolutely full circle. And to be overseeing a program of which I met my wife in. I mean, there's just so many of these natural overlaps with my work right now. It's just a huge blessing. But it is definitely something where having the longitudinal experience
Mm,
inside a program like that has been a huge benefit. I think Dunn students can resonate with this feeling of like, there's someone who's went through my experience, right?
mhm.
I'm able to tell stories that directly relate to the experience.
I think one of the things that I'm enjoying hearing you talk about is how much it's been about everybody else around you and
Mm,
how they made it what it is for you and give me an opportunity to get my foot in the door and I'm show you what I'm made of. That's another thing that I've always loved about you is I think you were like the student body president at some point, weren't you? Yeah.
I was involved in student congress. I didn't go down that
Okay.
path, but I was a
Okay,
senator.
that's right. Let's talk about the Doane Rugby Club a little bit because
Yes.
you started this thing. And dude, it was like one day you just came to me and you said, "Hey, I want to start this Doane Rugby Club. Are you in?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I didn't know anything else about it except for I figured I should start watching rugby and figure out what that looks like. So my off seasons from being a scholarship to soccer player on the Doane campus, I would
Yes.
beef up 30 pounds over the winter and then just start playing rugby with you guys. And you
That's
were the
so great.
scrum half, and I was the
Yeah,
fly half
yeah,
most times. And so it's essentially for people who don't know rugby, it's kind of like you were the quarterback and I was the running back. And then I
yeah,
was like dishing it out to everybody else as we made moves and got
yes.
creative. Oh my goodness. I talk about it all the time because I just loved it so much. And one of the things I talk about a lot is about how large I get in such a short amount of time that I would always like knock into things because just like my body was so huge. I just like had no spatial awareness.
Bulk was too real, and it affected, like, my ability to move through my apartment.
Dude, that was so fun. I remember we went to this game and I hit this one guy so hard. I watched the snot fly out of his nose and land on my shirt, and he like sailed 10 yards out of the field. Dude, I just loved hitting people. It just, oh my gosh, it was so
It was an
cathartic.
incredible experience, I look back on it, and I have such fond memories because it was ours, right? Like, when I
Yeah.
talk to people about that experience, like, we owned it. It was ours. There was this beauty in kind of the organic nature of what all these crazy people were interested in doing together. And, I think why so many people came into the fold like yourself was simply just because it was like you would interact with this group and you're like, these weirdos like love this. I don't any of them really know what we're doing, but they just love being together. Nick, there are marriages that came
Yeah,
out of Doane Rugby.
that's right.
There are people who got their bodies
Oh my God.
tattooed with the Doane Rugby crest. A bunch of us, initially who started it was because we had done athletics our whole lives up to that point, and then we transitioned out of athletics when it came to Doane, and we were all just struggling, I think, a little bit with, like, "What do we do with all this energy? I need to be physical." Yes.
Dude, you beat the literal snot out of people on the
Yeah,
field. And then as soon as you get off the field, it's like, let's go have a drink. Like, you're
yeah.
my guy.
Give me
Let's
a
start
hug,
hanging out.
like, "Dude, that was incredible."
So many people I never would have met otherwise. And that was my favorite part of it because I'm just a massive extrovert and just love people. And so having people I never would have interacted with was my absolute favorite part. I do feel bad that I broke Jesse's brother's nose in that one game because he was
Just
on my
remember, Jesse's brother wasn't even a Doan student. So just remember, like, that's how fringe we were
he
going.
wasn't
We were
supposed
so
to be there.
desperate. He wasn't even supposed to be on the team, and we gave him a jersey, and he played anyways. So that gives you some solace in the idea that you broke his nose, okay? So it's really okay. But yeah, I just think as a young person, how formative that was to be able to own this thing and to get this groundswell and to be a part of this, like, supportive culture. I think of some people who were like misfits on their athletics team who found a home in rugby. It was just a beautiful experience and one where I always just think back so fondly and try to help young students in some regard, like, think about how you take that much ownership over something and make it yours. And am I saddened to say that that program lasted like 4 years, basically? Yeah, that's unfortunate. Would it be amazing if there was a rugby club on campus right now? Like 100%.
Start it back up.
In my 8 years, I have had students approach me, and I always do lead with, like, some of the grounding facts of, like, what ended the program, because people will definitely get hurt because it is like
Yeah.
playing football and soccer together. It's exhausting and insanely physical. Up at Wayne, that's when I tore my hamstring. That was, like, the most gruesome injury I've ever experienced.
I remember that nasty bruise you had when it
It was
rolls up.
insane. Yes. While my Olympic track career is done for and I can't ever,
Sorry,
represent
man.
my country as a track athlete in the Olympics.
As a hurdler.
Absolutely, yes. And while I have to give up, like, water skiing as a sport, it's quite okay.
Like that first game where we went up to Wayne, I had gloves on because it was like 0 degrees outside. And it was one of
Terrible.
those gloves that flip back and I could get my fingertips, but the ball was so wet because it was a wet snow. And
Yeah.
I think I dropped the ball 2 times in a row. And when you drop it forward, it's called a knock on. So it's a turnover essentially. The ball's always got to go backwards. After the second time, you're like, Nick, take your gloves off.
Yeah.
It's the first time anyone had ever talked to me that way.
Why
And
am I playing this sport? with this crazy short person screaming at me about taking these gloves off in the freezing cold. Like, why have I done this?
But I did. I chucked those things. I never saw them again. I totally got lost and trampled underfoot. And, I don't want to say that's like the turning point in my life, but like it was a big moment for me where I was like,
Yeah.
someone could be direct and
Yeah.
honest and
Yes.
a little brutal. And you know
Yeah.
what? We can still be friends and
Abs-
I can take direction well and we can continue to succeed as a team. But
Absolutely.
it's just so funny because it's freezing my butt off and
Terrible
I
cold.
just, yeah, and just slipping everywhere. And you're like, take the gloves off.
I mean, I don't recall his exact memory because maybe I was yelling at too many people as Scrummy. But, I'm sure at the time I was like, Nick is one of our most trusted backs in the line. And so if he's going to knock on, we have no chance. So it doesn't shock me that I screamed at you about that because I was like, Nick, you have to get some up.
The other thing that shocked me too about rugby, even though, so I'm like 175, I was like 200 pounds during rugby. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that was just massive because I have a 5'9" frame, so
Yeah.
not that large. And I've seen these other guys who are 6'4" and they're 250 running at full speed. And maybe they've never played a sport in their entire lives. But I'm like, am I going to survive this
For
guy?
real.
So a lot of the times is like try to undercut them. You try not to let them land on top of you. And that was like my second real bout with fear of
Mm.
physicality. There was a 300-pound neighbor who landed on me when I was in middle school when we were playing football in the yard. That was my first real experience. I got that wind crushed out of me. But seeing these other guys, I'm like, Quint is telling me to put my shoulder down and take this guy over my shoulder. And I'm like, I want to do it, but at the same time, I kind of want to sidestep. Oh, I slipped.
Yeah, no, you're real. I mean, I think that rugby in so many ways is a sport that really challenges you to kind of head on take the fear of that moment. I completely understand the like facing the fear piece of
Yeah.
rugby. I am looking to people like former football players or guys who are like 3 times my size, and I'm looking them in the face and I'm screaming at them. I'm gonna throw you the ball and you have to run just straight into that group of people. I think so fondly of that time with that group and those people and what a beautiful time it was.
Yeah. There's so many things I admire about you. Another one of the things that I admire is not only did you yell at me, you're looking at like Steven from the football team in the face. You're yelling in Monday's face, Chris, and just so many people. No one was upset or offended by you. You were yelling, but we all respected you. We
That's so
all
kind.
wanted to do good for you. I played soccer my whole life, and my club coach pulled me to the sideline one day and said, I yell at you a lot, more than anybody else out here. That's because I believe in you. The moment I stop
Mhm.
yelling at you is the moment you should be worried.
Mhm.
And my dad was a co-coach, and when he overheard that, he was like, okay, Nick, are you okay with that? And I was like, I love it. Bring it
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
But like he didn't do that to everyone, but you did. And somehow like you were able to get the respect of everybody. So call it magic, call it incredible leadership, but dude, that's just something I've just always admired about you.
That's very kind of you. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about relationship, right? And I think like if you're fostering relationship with the people who are in your team, in your community, in your sphere, then I think that approach makes sense, you know? You talk about somebody like Monday, he's not anyone who I would have ever crossed paths with. I think about some of the women from the women's side of our club. We would have never crossed paths in a meaningful way. Part of that strategy plays well in that environment because of kind of the hyper aggression necessary to do rugby, right? And I'm thinking about like, what do you have to do to help Jeff find confidence when fear is so real, right? Because Jeff is like soaking wet 110 pounds. He was one of the most committed people to the culture and to the team and cared so deeply about our bylaws. And then, you got somebody like Curtis who had no interest in the bylaws of our constitution that would afford us allocations so that we could have jerseys and travel to these games. But Curtis and Jeff we're friends because of rugby. And just like when you get that chance to see those things happening organically, I think that's even more motivating to say you double down on relationship.
There are so many beautiful things that I learned, so many amazing people I met that I wouldn't have met otherwise. There was a culture that I never would have experienced. people came down from Canada to play. Like, never would experience that, and the support, the groundswell, as you're talking about, like, the organic structure of it all, the camaraderie. That rugby community seems like it is society at its best. Like, it's a
Mm,
microcosm of society at its best. It's like, "I'm supporting you. There's an abundance here. If you win, that doesn't mean I have to lose. At the end of the day, we're gonna get more opportunities, and you're gonna support me regardless of how much you win or how much you lose."
absolutely.
Like, that's humans trying to be human.
Yeah. Well, and there's
That's
an
beautiful.
opportunity here, right? Like there's an opportunity to do something. And I see that too as I've reflected on it and thought about its application to the work I do with students now and young people now. There's so many risks about what we did, so many different challenges that came up in that process. But there's some cultural parts about rugby where, like, at the end of a game, everybody celebrates together, winners and losers.
Yeah. No one's above anybody else. You show up with what you got and who you've got, and you do your best, and you put yourself out there, and then you put your arm around somebody else and you walk off the field and you
Yeah.
celebrate life together. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just literally that simple. So that's so cool. Well, okay, so I don't want to talk about rugby the whole time, even though I could just continue to just pull memories from the bank. Let's talk about what is something maybe behind the scenes that you're working on or building that the students that you interact with don't see? Because in higher ed, I
Hmm.
usually you have to go through some kind of ongoing education. If you're going to be a great leader, you know that you have to continually read the books and go to the conferences and interact with people who are in positions that maybe you desire to be in someday, or you got to
Yeah.
rub shoulders with people who maybe you could see as a mentor or someone
Yeah.
who is laterally doing what you're doing somewhere else. What does that look like behind the scenes for you?
Yeah. I was thinking a little bit about what you're doing here and how
Mhm.
important that mentorship piece is for the programs I oversee in my own personal life as well. I have a lot of mentors who have spoken in my life at different times and have been really important. And one of the things I seek out in intentional mentorship, but then I also try to practice with my students is something I teach in the program. One of the values is called empowerment.
Mm.
And I think that's a very buzzwordy word. It's one of those things that could mean 85 different things to which organization you're a part of. But for me as a leader, one of the fundamental pieces is not about just doing it all. Fundamentally, if you're doing it all, you're robbing your organization and the people you work with of opportunity. So, one of the practices we have to work on is thinking about how we empower the people that we're with. And so the way that I do that practically is that I talk about how we best empower someone is about asking questions. Asking questions that give them back authority and responsibility. The research suggests, my own practice suggests, if in my head I want you to go to point B, I ask you questions that you yourself find your way to point B, or more beautifully, you find point F or J. And I had no concept that those were possibilities in your life. I was just asking questions to move you in a process. What I'm doing is I'm offering you the opportunity to think through and process with someone who cares about you as a mentor. Where are we going and what does this look like? And if I layer that with affirmations, as you said today, you talked about things that you admired about me. Those affirmations layer in helping someone grow in their confidence about what they can do. That isn't generally just one conversation. It's rare that in one conversation we have fully discovered the new waypoint and are fully chasing it, but instead is a series of things. And trust me, in my own practice as a professional, it is so challenging to not just be like, okay, here's the advice. Here's what you should do. Bye. Have a great day. Good to see you. It's been amazing. And to instead just hold the space for the student to
Mhm.
explore. I think about that as a part of my church family. I'm the head deacon at my church, which is the group of people who work on the physical and felt needs of the congregation. And so if people have needs in association with rent or utilities or bills or managing finances or moving or yard work or like any of those just like physical needs that anybody may have, we partner and walk alongside them. And I think about playing out empowerment with the people that I work with inside that group.
I love that. I love the paradigm that you're operating out of. You talked earlier about building confidence, helping instill confidence, and part of that is through mentorship and empowering them through questions. That's how Jesus led people. You know, ask a question, and he'd ask a question back to you. You know,
And then he'd
so
tell them a story and then
yeah,
he'd
they
ask
tell
them
the story.
it's like,
Yeah,
man, he's He's showing us the way for
It's like, is
sure.
he setting me up? What's going on? Yeah. And yes, he's just setting you up for success. To
Absolutely.
help you realize, I think, to a deeper point that the answer is within you. And really, you need to find the confidence in yourself for it to be brought out of you. I think a lot of young adults think, I just need to be more confident. If I get in shape and I eat right and I go take a chance talking to this guy or this
Mhm.
girl or whoever, then I'll be confident. But, you know, it's just not the case. Confidence comes from others. And so that's why it's
Absolutely.
so hard when someone maybe gets bullied or something in middle school. And then they
Sure.
spend 20 years thinking about that experience and how it formed them.
Mhm.
It's curious how two siblings can grow up in the same household and turn out to be so vastly different. And one can be confident and one can have a lack of confidence. How is that possible to grow up in the same household? Because the household is not the only place you exist.
No, not at
You
all.
exist in the world, you exist with friendships, you have your own personality. People say things to you differently based on how the way you look and
Mhm.
the baggage that they bring.
Absolutely.
That's what we're trying to do in this podcast. You hit the nail on the head. We're trying to build confidence, but also a sense of capability.
Mhm.
But we start with a sense of groundedness. And so I want to go there a little bit.
Yeah.
When you're mentoring these young adults in university, how do you empower them to go out and get a mentor after they're done with
Sure.
university, knowing that they're always going to have Quint? Maybe I can call him up from time to time, but like he's a
Yeah.
busy guy, probably
Yeah,
not going
yeah.
to be my personal mentor for the next 10
Yeah.
years of my career.
Yeah. In the first year in the leadership program, students are assigned an upperclassman mentor, and they meet with them for 30 minutes a week, every week of the whole first year on campus. And often those are longer than 30 minutes because those students want that time with each other. I mean, it's a really sought after student leadership position on campus that's has a lot of applications, which is really a huge blessing. And then as a later part of the sophomore level leadership class, we actually talk about finding a career oriented mentor for the students in the program. And so then the goal is to find someone outside the university in industry or in a graduate program or whoever who you can form that relationship with. So some part of me says there's this significant value in understanding an array of mentors. I think sometimes we think there's a sole person who's going to be that. But I think about my own journey, and I've had people who've been really impactful spiritual mentors for seasons of life. I've had people who've been really impactful career mentors for different seasons of life. People who've been mentors for what it means to be a husband. And yeah, there's some interplay between those things, but there's also just kind of this wealth of engaging with these different audiences and knowing that people come into your life for periods of time, sometimes for the entirety of your life, or sometimes for a short season of your life. And they can speak really profoundly and maybe really kind of intensely into you. It's really not about me convincing them kind of anything. I'm just pointing out to you the value you told me existed. You told me these things. So what do you want to do with that information? Because it's yours. Just kind of shine the mirror back on them to say, I want you to be really successful and that matters to me. And I think that a big part of that is having people who mentor you in life. And to be totally honest, we ask prospective students who are interviewing to be in the scholarship program why mentorship matters.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. What's one of the best answers you can hear about why do you think mentorship matters in
Yeah.
the application?
Yeah. For me, if a young person at that stage before they've entered the collegiate environment can understand how much a relationship matters, that's everything I need to know. Can you acknowledge that there are people who've spoken into your life and have given you guidance and given you perspective, and that that relationship has mattered to where you are today? That's all I need. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say that that's the story I get. I think I get a lot of like, it's important to be coached, it's important to get advice, it's important to basically be told what to do. But if they can still acknowledge that, like, this other human has very much mattered to me and they're a big part of who I am today, those are aces for me. I just need you to acknowledge that other people are going to be really foundational to your life and that they have shaped you. And so I am looking for a little bit of humble. I'm looking for a little bit of acknowledgement about someone else and a little bit of like, can you step outside of yourself? When I think about those answers that are super memorable, it's when a student can tell me a story of how someone sacrificed for them and how it's meant so much to them. And it doesn't have to be like when I say sacrifice again, I think we think extremes. We think like the most insane sacrifice anyone's been asked to do. But I think about the students who've talked about single parenthood and how impactful a parent has been who has given and given and given.
Mm.
I think about somebody who talks about a teacher who saw them and recognized them and who said, like, I see your potential. I think about those stories as really foundational ones to me because it's someone who has enough wisdom at an extremely young age to acknowledge how influential other people are and how much people can change your life.
100%. Yeah, on the 5th episode of the podcast, I was talking to one of my students from downtown Kansas City that used to be homeless, and she's in culinary school now in Kansas City, and she was
Mm,
talking about how she's working a full-time job and doing full-time school, and there's just a lot of expectations, and she emailed her one of her professors, "I'm so sorry, I'm just not gonna be able to accomplish this thing." She made a point to recognize how important it was for her to strengthen a relationship, knowing that she
mm,
was going to need to ask for things. And that's always been my MOs. I build relationships because I'm highly relational and I love it and it drives me. It gets me out of bed in the morning.
yeah.
At the end of the day, you are going to need something from someone. You're either
Yeah.
going to offend them on accident, so you're going to need
Mhm,
forgiveness, or you
mm,
might need a connection for a job.
mhm,
You might need a shoulder to cry on when something tragic happens in your life. You're always going to need something from someone.
mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so talking about mentorship, I'll challenge you for a second. Do you have a mentor in your own life?
Yeah, I do. Yep. So the person I would connect with right now is someone who's been a career mentor for me since my time at Gonzaga. His name's Eric, and he now actually works at Creighton up the road here in Nebraska. That relationship started because we had moved to Spokane and we knew not a soul. My wife had never even been there before we moved. It was becoming abundantly clear that I needed someone who could speak into my career experiences and what I was looking for, but who wasn't my direct supervisor and wasn't my supervisor's supervisor. So they had no connection day in, day out to my work, but
Mhm,
could contextualize and understand my work, but
mhm,
not have any sort of kind of like other agenda. They just valued that. And so I remember the first conversation with Eric. I went into his office and he's someone who I kind of just like admired from afar. He was the VP of a different part of student success team there at Gonzaga. And what I always appreciate about him is just very clear wisdom. There was
mm,
just an intentionality with his words and his thoughts. And as a young person, I could talk for days. And so I was like, I need to find someone who thinks holistically about what comes out of their mouth and does so with a very clear understanding that there's experience behind it. It isn't just innate wisdom, it's that they've lived and seen some things. And so it's informing what they say. We've ebbed and flowed in that mentor relationship too. I think that's important to know. There's times when my career has needed different things. Higher ed is kind of a tumultuous industry to be a part of, and there's always pressure on higher education. That's a good thing to be able to have someone evaluate and look at your work and say, what's the value? When a mentor can just ask the blunt question that you needed to have asked,
mhm.
and do it from a place that just says like, "Okay, I've heard you talk. This is what I need you to answer." That was just such a refreshing thing. Eric and I are texting every week, I can tell you that. And there's been seasons where we haven't talked for 6 months. It's okay. He just gave, like, such recent clear wisdom on a phone call. I've been working on that thing for, like, 3 days, and he just said one thing, and then he asked me a question, and it was just like, "Oh my gosh, get out of here. That's ridiculous.
Get out of here.
Get out
You
of
just
here."
that's such good affirmation. But does he mentor you in career only, or does he also do personal mentoring for you?
Sure, yeah, no, he's kind of my, career mentor. I would say that, like I said before, there's pieces of kind of spiritual components that play into that as well. And then I have, someone through church, one of the pastors at church who plays a really, helpful role in spiritual mentorship and
Mhm,
navigating that. Because I'm in a leadership role at church, I think that's
mhm,
especially important to be able to be connected to the pastoral team and have those conversations and receive that spiritual mentorship. But those conversations can be interwoven. So I have talked about career pieces with my pastor, and I've talked about my spiritual life with Eric. And so it's not like those things are exclusive in any one way or another.
You're a multifaceted being, like, whatever space you're in, regardless of whether you wanna bring it in there or not.
Yeah, yeah. I can't leave that stuff at the door, right? And I think
Leave your
if
spiritual
anything,
self at the door.
yep, check
Yeah.
that out. That'd be great. Thanks so much. Just leave it over there by the coats. If they're not interested in your full self and you've shared that with them, that's something then I would encourage people to think about. I think about
Yeah.
people like Doug and Amy Schmidt and their spiritual development of people at Doane during our time there.
Beautiful.
Incredible. The amount of young people that they spoke into, the people they welcomed into their homes, into their families, into their lives, and the way that they encouraged us and built us up and asked us critical questions and encouraged us in our faith. Insane. And, unfortunately, Amy isn't with us anymore. But I think back on the work she did here on Earth. I think she changed young people's lives more than I hope to. I hope to get to that point where I can change that many young people's lives in my time on this earth. So, yeah, I think about people like that it's okay for them to be a season of your life.
Yeah, Doug mentored me for a while, and that was really my first experience of mentorship. And it's funny reflecting on that. They had welcomed a young man from Honduras into their home, Marlon. And after I graduated from Doane, like 7 months later, I landed a role running an outreach center, an hour and 15 minutes from Crete, where the Doane University is. And I invited him to come live with me and work in a factory and get a start on his career. And it's just so cool to see how someone's impact can then just ripple to someone else and continue to ripple. And, you know, what a gift mentorship really is. I'm curious if you have very specific advice for young people looking for a mentor, besides feeling it, besides not having to leave a
Mhm.
piece of yourself at the door. In Gonzaga, you went for a VP role as your mentor.
Mhm.
It takes a lot of confidence, which is something you have. What possessed you to want to
Yeah.
go for the VP role as your mentor? And would you do it over again to
Mm.
go after a person in such a high position within the
Yeah.
organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely would do that over again. 9 times out of 10, I think is that would be the goal for me because yes, there's the positionality of it, but I would say that there were characteristics of his leadership that were more the pieces that I was pursuing. And so obviously there can be connection between characteristics of leadership and then the position that someone gets to because of those characteristics and that leadership. And that's I think what we all desire, right? It's that like everyone leading an organization has the characteristics that we all admire and want.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my experience that's not always true. And so, what I would emphasize to people is think about the characteristics that you admire and the things that you want out of the person that you're looking to engage with. And so, one of the things that I thought about in that relationship with Eric is that I knew his faith was an important part of why he was missionally working at Gonzaga. And that wasn't the case for everybody else that I was working with who were in leadership positions at the institution. So that was a characteristic. I want there to be a faith perspective as a part of our career development conversations. That's something I aspire to. I was looking for someone who could help me be more thoughtful in the way that I spoke about myself and about what I wanted. I'm not saying we're just going to like wave the wand and it will be so. But if those people don't have those characteristics and instead they just look like a mirror of you without any of the characteristics you're aspiring to, you're kind of setting them up for it to be kind of a rough mentorship. Think about the characteristics because I think you're going to then find people in positions that make sense. You talk about being prepared to get a bunch of no's. Reach out on LinkedIn, you reached out on social media, you try to make a connection with a professional person, and it's just ghost town. It's okay. The no game is an important young experience to navigate. Before I got my job at Gonzaga, I was breaking into the Pacific Northwest and knew truly no one in higher education. I applied to 60 jobs after I got my master's degree before I got the Gonzaga job. And I remember that critical window in the spring where I went to a hiring conference where there are literally just universities sitting in a gymnasium in booths interviewing the masses of people who want to be student affairs professionals. And I remember walking out of the experience, having had multiple interviews or second round interviews, and being like, struck out. There's nothing there. I wasn't in Gonzaga's first pool, man. I wasn't in their top candidate group. There were people
Mm.
who said no to the opportunity so that I could get the opportunity to fly to campus and interview. And that stinks to know that you're like not in the top group, but those no's are important and they teach you things about what you want and what you want to believe in. And so as you look to mentors who say no and no and no, maybe there's some lessons there too about what that looks like. Maybe you're looking in a place you shouldn't be looking. Maybe you're using an avenue that isn't successful. Maybe instead you need to text someone you admire who maybe isn't exactly that skill set, but that you admire them as a person. And you say, like, I'm looking for someone to help me make more sense of my words and be intentional with the things I say out loud. Do you know anybody who's really good at that? I would love to catch coffee with them because then what's going to happen is I'm going to like think about that. And for a second, I'm gonna be a little hurt because you didn't text me about that being me. And then secondly, I'm gonna actually critically think like, wow, someone asked me to really think. And then I'm gonna say, actually, yeah, can I do a text and connect you, or can I send an email and connect you? I think this person's amazing. And maybe that's not the person, but that's an opportunity along the way. The no's tell us something. We can actually learn from them. And I always just felt like the 60 no's before the yes to Gonzaga was just a clear path to saying Gonzaga was 1,000% where Caitlin and I were supposed to be. There is value in seeking out the lessons in the no's.
That's beautiful. So much wisdom there. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I am curious. I want to wrap up with this. How then did you decide to transition to Doane, your alma mater, after Gonzaga?
Yeah, so there was definitely some personal pieces that were influential for us, right? When we moved to Gonzaga, that felt like an adventure. My wife and I had been married for a year before we moved, and we really wanted to go have an adventure that was going to be ours. Caitlin had decided to not teach when we were in Washington State because of kind of certifications from state to state that made it really complicated. And so she was working in higher education, and we had been there for 3 years, and she was working in admissions, but, like, her passion was always for working with middle school kids. And so there was this part of her that just ached for that chance to reengage that group. And so there was an opportunity to work in new student orientation and to work into career development back at our alma mater. And, that's a place we loved and adored. And so to be able to kind of shift out of crisis related work and to work towards this sense of like, I love this place. It means so much for me. I'll train students on how to help other students find belonging here. That's amazing. That sounds like a great fit. And so yeah, you got to explore the things you don't know. Otherwise, how can you say if you do or don't want to do them or be engaged with them in any meaningful way?
I think that's a great point. I'm thinking of the word exploratory. Continue to be exploratory. Don't count yourself out too early. Don't think that you have it all figured out. Don't think that just because you don't have it figured out that you can't pivot.
Yeah.
Continue to groom relationships and gain experiences. I've been telling young adults that I've been mentoring, imagine you go in this direction and it turns out to be a complete wash for what you end up wanting to do. It doesn't even look that great on a resume. Can I tell you that you're gonna have really great stories to tell?
Absolutely.
And ultimately, you're gonna be around dinner tables and you're gonna be
Yeah.
schmoozing with people throughout your life. And people want to hear stories. That's part of makes what us human beings so interesting is the ability to convey stories and
Yep.
attach meaning to them. So great point. Okay, final thing here, Quint.
Yeah.
Besides all the wisdom you've already shared, what is something like very practical that you would want young adults, burgeoning young professionals to walk away with following this episode?
I would love for young people to understand that confidence that maybe I share or feel good about came from experiences. And then I'd slowed down enough to think about those experiences and what they meant to me and who I was as a person. And those were the building blocks that gave me confidence. So it wasn't that I just absolutely crushed something, thus I gained insane confidence. It's actually that I just reflected on the full experience. I tell my students this all the time. The best summer internship is often the one that you absolutely hate. And that experience can be really impactful in knowing what you actually care about.
Yeah, I love the point about reflecting. It takes margin. And if busy students, margin is hard to come by. But if we're all honest, there's areas where we waste time when we could optimize some of our time for good. And it's just, I think, a matter of prioritizing the margin in your life for health and for good moments. And meditation or self reflection, silence even, is one of those things that I think can pay dividends for many, many years to come. And I want to encourage anybody who's listening, if you're looking for a mentor like Quint or myself, you can stop because you found one in me. Check me out on my website, afterthebellnyc.com. I'd love to have a free consultation with you. figure out if I'm the right fit and where you're going, and maybe encourage you to check that out. Quint, my friend, it's been way too long. Dude, it's been so good to be with you, my friend. Let's stay in touch. Talk soon. Cheers, everybody.